Hi, my name's Tom Craven, and when I was born, I had a birth defect called tetralogy of Fallot. And what this essentially means is four different things wrong with the heart. They are a hole between the two ventricles of the heart, so down the middle of the heart, a hole going between the two, an overriding aorta, which essentially meant that deoxygenated blood was going into the oxygenated blood, so then when it was being pumped around my body, there was deoxygenated blood being put around my body and me turning blue. Another one is a narrowing at the pulmonary valve, so the actual tube itself was narrow, and also my valve wasn't working correctly. What this then means is the right ventricle is enlarged because it is having to overcompensate for this defects, and then you basically end up with more muscle on one side of your heart, so I have an enlarged heart on one side. Luckily for me, this was caught very early on, and at 13 days old, I was able to have a shunt put in. Although they couldn't really operate properly on me at that point, what this meant is they were able to delay the effects of these defects that I had on my heart. So it meant that when I was 13 months old, they could operate properly. So then my second operation was a complete correction of all of these things, all four of them. And then they said, you'll probably need surgery again later on in life. I believe, I don't know, I was 13 months old, so they wouldn't have told me, they've told my parents. So what this meant was that at some point we knew that I was going to have surgery again. And then when I was about 13, I think it was when I was 13, because I obviously go for checkups all the time, and I used to go every year, then they tried to stretch it out to every 2 or 3 years. Then they scaled that back down when I was a teenager to every year. And then I had to go for a test where I had to run on a treadmill where they were testing for how quickly my heart could actually recover from exercise, to then find out whether they need to actually do any further surgery. The options that were given to us at the time was, we can operate now and then you'll have a much quicker recovery because you're young and you'll be able to get through it, and then hopefully you won't need it for some amount of time. Or we can wait and you'll need it when you're an adult and we'll have to operate then, and then you won't be able to recover as quickly. So that summer, when I was 14, I was having open heart surgery for now the third time. What this meant is I missed an entire summer. That's really kind of, a small issue to really pay for being actually alive. What this meant was I was going in to have surgery again. They were going to have to break the sternum, so the bone down the middle of your chest, and correct the valve that was leaking. I say correct, they actually replaced it with a cow's valve. The three questions I always get are, do you moo, do you eat grass, or do you lactate milk? The answer to all three is no. They replaced the pulmonary valve with a cow's valve, and they said to me and my family at the time that it was going to last around 10 years. Ever since then, I've really had it in my mind that in 10 years' time I would need surgery again, or just before then, because they're not going to wait until the last minute to duck in and actually do the surgery. So in my head, I had about 8 or 9 years until I was going to need it again, so I was going to need it in my early 20s. Got to my early 20s and they went, no, it's absolutely fine, nothing to worry about. Like, we don't need to do anything yet, we'll just keep monitoring it. And they have done. And I had an MRI scan about 2 or 3 years ago, and they said it's leaking about 20%, which sounds quite a lot. I thought, wow, that's quite a lot. And they said, oh, we won't really do anything until it gets to around 50%. That seems like a lot of leaking, right? But apparently that's totally fine. To give you context, a normal valve would be leaking about 10 to 15% of the blood anyway, so it's not so bad. It's really just a washback. Not like they're not completely perfect anyway, so it wasn't a huge difference in that regard. And then I went through an MRI scan a few weeks ago, and that was an odd experience because we're in the middle of lockdown, and so I'm going alone and having to be in a mask, and there's as few people as there as possible. Mine was really early in the morning. It was like 7:45 in the morning or something. I was in there. Usually an MRI scan lasts about 45 minutes when they're doing your heart. Mine lasted over an hour. And I was like, great. I was so uncomfortable. The first time I was absolutely fine having it. The second time I was so uncomfortable. I kept getting pins and needles in my arms, and I just kept wanting to fidget and move. I think what really happened was I didn't lie down in a comfortable position to begin with, and you're trapped in a box. Like, you're not going anywhere. Like, you've got this big thing around you. You're not going anywhere for some time. Then I was having an appointment on the Monday that's just gone. The Monday before, they phoned me to remind me of this appointment and to wear a mask and that I needed to come in for it. And I was like, okay, cool, that's fine. Then on the Thursday, they rang me to say, just to remind you, you've got your telephone consultation at 10:30 on Monday. And I was like, no, I've been told I need to come in. Can you double check that? And they put me through to the doctor's receptionist who said, oh no, you need to come in. Great. So then I spent the entire weekend panicking because why would I need to go in if there was no issues at all? I go in on the Monday and basically they do all the normal tests that they would do, taking my blood pressure and that, all the normal stuff that they've done every time I've ever gone, an ECG scan, all the normal stuff that I'm very used to now after 29 years of this. And then what the doctor explained to me was the leak has got slightly worse, but isn't really a cause for concern. But the tube that leads to the pulmonary valve has narrowed. So they want me to go back for tests in about 7 months, a load of tests. This time, instead of being on a treadmill, it'll be on a bike. I assume it's very similar kind of test and testing for a lot of things to see if this narrowing is actually affecting my heart in any way, because I could just be very healthy and I could actually have a very healthy heart other than a narrowing that may not actually be any issue for me. They just don't know at this point, so they need to test for that. And then the doctor mentioned how now that the tricuspid valve is starting to leak, and I had no idea what that was either, don't worry. But basically another valve is leaking. And this combination of things has led them to now do all these tests in 7 months' time, and then he's going to discuss it with his team on what the next step is. And the options really are they wait and see to see if it gets any worse and to see if it's actually okay for now, or to operate. They've got two main decisions to make with operating, and that is whether it's going to be keyhole or open heart surgery. And basically it comes down to whether they can do keyhole safely on what they need to do and what procedures they need to do for me, or they'll just go down the route of open heart surgery. This may come as a surprise, like there'll be people out there who may watch this and have no idea that I've even had open heart surgery, and that's fine. This video is really for me to be able to look back at, because it's terrifying, in all honesty. I've known that this is coming for about 15 years. Still makes it scary. Doesn't matter how long you are aware that you're going to need an operation, it's still scary. I play it off as being very normal. It is a very normal conversation for me to have about talking about my open heart surgery. It is entirely normal. But to know that in the next year, I could be having the surgery again, it's terrifying. This has been 29 years that I've lived with this. I don't know any different. I know that when I was going through primary school and high school, that every year I would go to Alder Hey and I would have all these little tests. And I got very used to having like an ECG scan. They always do like what I call the ultrasound test on my heart, and I have to go over to my left, and as I've got older I have to go further and further over to my left because I've got bigger and bigger. And basically the heart is, they need it as close as they can to the rib cage so then they can actually see it. And all of this has been very normal for me growing up. I can remember going swimming and people about, he's got a scar, because it used to be a lot more prominent than it is now. At 14, I don't really remember a whole lot of it. I remember a conversation vaguely that was around the chances of, when I was 14, that I may not survive that operation. But that's really about it. There's an entire day that I don't remember. There's photos of me in intensive care unit, and I don't remember it at all, but there's photos of me apparently talking to family, and I don't remember that at all. Another one is that I had this portable DVD player so I could watch TV series that I wanted while I was in there, because I knew I was going to be in there for around a week. I was 14 and I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't really understand death until that point. And I think now that I'm an adult, I think it's true of everyone, we get a little bit more scared of things, especially like, as a kid you're fearless, you can go and jump off a tree and it's absolutely fine. I used to have a dream when I was a child that I was flying over Southport, and for some reason I was able to picture what Southport looked from above, and I hadn't had them dreams for about 10 years until a couple of weeks ago when I had the MRI scan. But another thing that I used to do as a child, especially when I was having my last surgery, was of death and how final it is. And it terrified me that it was entirely final, there was no coming back from it. And recently, in the last few weeks, I have been unable to sleep for a large portion of the night because I was thinking about death. And again, how final it is and how we really don't know what's coming. What I think terrified me as a young child and still terrifies me now as a 29-year-old is I've still got things to do. And I think for me, I am so glad that I have been doing a post today. Some days have been tough to think of something to say, but I've got so much that I want to share and so much that I want to be able to say, not because I'm going to say it better than anyone else, but just because I think we all have a unique insight into life, one way or another. And it's important that we can actually document that in some way. And I look back at who has been part of my life and who is no longer here, like my grandparents. There is very little documentation from their lives, and I don't want the same for me. However long I've got left, whether it's another 70 years or another 7 months, I don't want to be looking back at my life and going, I should have done this, I should have done that. And that's really what this year is about, is so that when I am older, I can look back at this period of my life and go, I didn't waste it. I know people have got in contact and said, oh, you haven't wasted it. And I'm like, there are certain parts of it that I feel like I have wasted, especially in photography terms. But I feel like there's a lot of things that I could have done. I could have done a lot more videos, and I didn't. And that's what I want to try and make up for, so that whenever my time comes, I can look back at my life and kind of go, that was all right. I did all right there. That's all I really have to say.